We kick things off with a massive, imposing royal castle under a brilliant blue sky. Kneeling in the great hall of that massive castle, our MC hears the queen name him the Count of the Frontier. Murmurs fill the room as he, completely confused, asks if she didn't mean Count of the Border. Suddenly, the queen herself demands silence in the hall. Asked if our boy has gone deaf, he quickly stammers that he hasn't. With a stern look, Her Majesty demands to know why he hasn't accepted the appointment yet. Drenched in a cold sweat, our hero realizes he's in some seriously hot water. Not knowing what to do, he mentally screams for his status window, begging for a way out. In total desperation, the kid begs the sovereign to cancel this absurd decree. Furious, the blonde asks if he's going to dare refuse her will again, but our boy, calling her queen, is simply unaware of her true title. With a killer look, she questions what he just said. Terrified, he tries to explain himself, repeating the title of Your Majesty. Screaming, the queen says that calling her that means he doesn't recognize her as the King of Cain. The MC quickly throws himself on the floor, begging for forgiveness and saying he lost his mind for a moment. Just then, a mage opens a glowing magical map, revealing the new ruler's territory. In shock, the crowd in the hall discovers the territory is the monster-infested Apocalypse City. With a loud slam of his sword on the floor, the guard once again demands absolute silence. Firmly, the sovereign declares that the old city is no more and is now the domain of the Tamer family. On the map, the formerly doomed region magically gets renamed after its new, unlucky owner. Soon after, a nosy vice minister asks what in the world a Count of the Frontier title even is. With a cynical smile, the queen shamelessly confesses she just made up the position on the spot. After that declaration, our boy is left completely speechless by such audacity. Beaming with mockery, she congratulates the young man for being the first count of his kind in the continent's history. Bowing on the floor, the MC swallows his tears and forces out a thank you for this overwhelming grace. Right after, she raises her blade for the knighting ceremony. Then she brings the sword down right on the protagonist's head, a totally different kind of knighting. Internally screaming every curse word imaginable, he freaks out about the life-threatening mess he's in, and now he's got a lump on his head too. In the original game's story, this character was supposed to become the great captain of the Royal Guard. But later on, the poor guy would get involved in an incident and end up taking a dirt nap. Seeing the guy's meltdown, the guards gossip that he's been acting bonkers ever since he was revived. Tugging at his own hair, he wonders why he had to be reincarnated into this useless game character. In the past, we see the kid's real life as a simple, exhausted logistics worker named Bang Ho. With his younger siblings on his mind, he reflects on how tough life has been since their parents passed away. Surrounded by heavy boxes, our 9-to-5 warrior just wanted to give his family a better future. With a tired sigh, he realizes his much-awaited lunch break has finally arrived at the warehouse. On his way to the cafeteria, Bang Ho gets ready for his one and only daily vice, mobile games. On the device's screen, the famous game Rain of Dice starts loading its interface. Eyeing the items for sale, he decides to focus on knocking out the daily mission first, no messing around. Inside the game, a shaman mage appears, showing off her special ability to tame enemy troops. Grinning from ear to ear, our MC boasts that it's way easier to recruit monsters than to train soldiers. Out of nowhere, a giant, brutal ogre appears on the scene, ready to throw down. With a quick click of the tame button, he turns the huge beast into his newest battle minion. Glued to the screen, the kid advances across the map, looking for a few more shaman trolls to capture. A moment later, the victory notice flashes brightly, showing he cleared the stage with ease. Surprised by a sudden notification that pops up on the screen, Bang Ho blinks, not understanding a thing. On his phone's panel, a golden alert announces that the Apocalypse Territory defense has been unlocked. Squinting, he focuses on the screen to try and read the details of the strange quest. Shocked by what he just read, Bang Ho almost drops his phone in disbelief. Suddenly, the system promises to convert his in-game points into a mountain of cold, hard cash in real life. Blinded by greed, he's already calculating how much he'll make by selling the bonus mystical items. Faced with the hardcore mode's no continues warning, he finds the rules almost too generous. Deep in thought, Bang Ho seriously considers if it's worth risking it all on this one tempting gamble. Focused on his siblings' future, he hits the participate button with all the conviction in the world. Suddenly, a sinister red light flashes on the device, making his eyes widen in terror. Right below, a grim alert states that failing the mission will result in the player's real-life demise. A ferocious black dragon roars on the screen, and the system warns there's no pausing or quitting. The massive dragon roars, its tremendous presence striking fear into Bang Ho. In complete despair, our protagonist screams as he's sucked into the phone in a magical flash of light. Now in a grassy field, he realizes his soul has magically invaded the body of the knight, Joran Tamer. Since the original character had just perished, his soul hitched a ride on the resurrection. In the middle of nowhere, the MC checks his status window to confirm if time in the real world is truly frozen. With immense relief, he feels a huge weight off his shoulders, knowing his siblings are finally safe. The scene then cuts to the military tents, dozens of minutes after he took over as commander. Standing at attention, a beautiful redhead asks if the new count is feeling all right. To hide his nervousness, he turns his back as the panel informs him that Lillian is disappointed. Noticing the warrior's stats appearing before his eyes, he remembers she can't see the magical interface. With a sheepish, forced smile, our hero tries to play it off so he doesn't look like a total lunatic. With a pitying look, Lillian comments that the commander spent the whole trip talking to himself about his status. Frustrated, Bang Ho thinks that there's no way to explain he needs to shout the commands for the panel to work. Changing the vibe, the vice commander switches subjects, asking in a nostalgic tone if he remembers the past. Full of himself, the kid claims he remembers everything since he beat the game with this character a ton of times. Lillian tests him, asking him to repeat the exact words from that day. In the game's memories, the little redhead was crying alone and scared in the forest when the boys showed up. It was then that the old Joran appeared, calling out to her. With his hand outstretched, the young Joran invited the abandoned little girl to follow him toward a new life. With teary eyes, the redhead just watches the young man in silence. Soon a guard approaches, announcing that the troops are awaiting orders. The vice commander agrees, saying she'll join them shortly. With a confident smile, our boy calls the warrior by her name. Surprised, Lillian realizes the young man truly remembered the promise from their past. On the training grounds, the troops are in formation, waiting for a speech. Focused on the panel, our MC notices that the soldiers' loyalty level has dropped drastically. Lacking the original character's charisma, Bang Ho admits he doesn't have the same silver tongue to motivate the crew. Desperate, he asks for a little spiritual help from the body's former owner. In this decisive moment, he takes a deep breath and musters the courage to speak. In the middle of the troops, an anxious soldier asks what the platoon's fate will be. Firmly, the Lord replies that they are the ones who decide their own future. Scared, the guards whisper about the danger of marching straight into a monster pit. In a louder tone, the young man reminds them that he could very well be living in luxury in the capital. But he yells at the top of his lungs that he'd rather face hell itself alongside his comrades. The system then announces that his words struck a chord, and the troops' morale has started to rise. To secure their loyalty, our hero swears that one day he will reward everyone's efforts. In a challenging tone, he asks anyone willing to follow him to take a step forward. Without hesitation, the entire troop advances, shouting that they will follow him to the ends of the earth. Satisfied with the result, the MC sees his inspiration skill level up on the spot. Back at the imposing royal castle, the mood shifts completely. Seated on the throne, the queen asks what the heck the count wants now. Humbly, the boy requests the release of some servants for his new territory. Annoyed, the sovereign retorts that she's already given him all the soldiers and tells him to figure it out himself. Scornfully, she tells the young man to get creative and find helpers or hire mercenaries. Getting straight to the point, the Lord proposes pardoning prisoners and taking them as his new team. In the dark dungeons, the guard asks him to repeat the crazy thing he just said. With a document in hand, the young man announces he's not there to visit anyone but to release inmates. Excited, the warden immediately suggests a hardcore criminal for the Lord to take. On the panel, the MC analyzes the weak stats of the bandit convicted of theft and dismisses the idea. Catching on to the shady move, the count figures the guard is just trying to dump the worst inmates on him. With a frustrated sigh, he thinks he won't find anyone useful in this hole. Suddenly, his eyes meet an unusual figure in the next cell. Locked behind bars, a beautiful blonde priestess stares at him coldly. Curious, our boy asks about her crime and discovers she has 2 charges of homicide. Laughing, the guard explains that the crazy woman finished a guy off, revived him, and then did it again. The warden quickly tries to correct himself, saying the victim was actually a monster in disguise. Annoyed, the prisoner retorts, stating she has never taken a human life. Grabbing the bars, she yells that the creature was kidnapping children to sell them. With a serious look, the MC agrees, saying the scumbag deserved to go. Surprised by his response, the blonde finally sees some sense in a nobleman's words. Sarcastically, the boy adds that she only took him out twice because her power has its limits. With a smirk, the priestess confirms his theory on the spot. Consumed by fury, she says she would have taken out the monster 100 times if she could. Just then, the system flashes, announcing he's found an essential character for his journey. Checking her stats on the panel, he notes the girl is dangerous but extremely strong. Our hero quickly steps forward and makes his formal introduction. Without beating around the bush, he invites the healer to be the new military chaplain of his domain. Suspicious, the young woman asks what this special authority he mentioned is. Firm in his proposal, the young man guarantees she will have the power to freely punish the guilty. Thrilled with the idea, the blonde accepts the deal without a second thought. With a handshake, the contract between the two is finally sealed. On their way through the dungeons, the group descends to an even deeper section. While walking through the narrow space, the Lord finds the low ceiling on that floor strange. Helpfully, the guard explains that this area is exclusively for non-human prisoners. In the cell ahead, a short hobbit is serving a 7-year sentence for theft. Spilling the tea, the warden says the dwarf tried to steal a lady's heart, but ended up stealing her house deed instead. Completely nuts, the prisoner justifies it by saying if he couldn't have the woman, he'd at least have the house. Facepalming, our MC finds the logic absurd but decides to check the little thief's panel. On the screen, the information reveals that Bonnell has terrible habits but great intelligence stats. The system also points out that the little dwarf is an expert in disarming dungeon traps. Reading his file, the boy realizes that a former mercenary would be an ace up his sleeve for the squad. Casually, the nobleman comments that with 6 years still left in the cage, it must be a living nightmare. Ticked off, the prisoner complains that the food is garbage and he wants out of there ASAP. Aware of his hunger, the young man prepares his bait, noticing the little guy's priority. Going straight for the weak spot, the MC promises to get the dwarf out of there and guarantee top-tier meals. Skeptical, the little thief retorts that you can also buy good food in jail if you have the money. At that moment, the Lord asks the guard about the menu and hears about a disgusting dish of slime and sardines. Disgusted, the hobbit almost gags just imagining the dreadful feast. In total desperation, the dwarf screams to the heavens that he's willing to go anywhere. With a victorious smile, the noble welcomes his newest, starving recruit. The scene then cuts to the old, luxurious mansion that the real Joran had been given. In the empty garden, the boy remembers that the butler Bylade II he heard about his boss's new post. In his memories, the only maid in the house is also seen fleeing in terror. Mounted on his horse, our hero finally sets off with his troops toward the deadly territory. Curious, our boy asks the soldiers who those rescued people in the back are. Focusing on the pink-haired girl, the guard says she refuses to leave. Worried, the MC immediately asks if the young woman has nowhere to go back to. In a super kind gesture, our hero invites the girl to travel with the group. Surprised by the invitation, the pink-haired girl's eyes widen, unable to believe such kindness. In his game memories, our MC remembers saving the girl in the past and that the mansion is worth a fortune. Driven by greed, the Lord seriously considers selling the entire property to raise some cash. Completely desperate, the young woman thinks she's going to be sold as a slave, but the young man quickly clarifies he means the house. Relieved, the maid Peach sighs as the magic panel reveals she is completely obsessed with her boss. Full of energy, the girl swears to follow our hero to the ends of the continent without a second thought. With a dark, somewhat psycho look, she warns that if she's abandoned, she'll hunt him down even in the underworld. According to the system's warning, the kid notices that firing the girl would be extremely costly, with an almost zero chance of success. With a headache, our MC finds it really bizarre to be called master by a girl his sister's age. Super protective, the maid grabs the young man tightly, reminding him of the famous after effects of resurrection. Choking, the Lord begs the crazy girl to let go of him right now. Always dramatic, the pink-haired girl complains that the noble is being very cruel about her concern. Uncomfortable and awkward, our boy just asks for a little personal space to breathe. To command respect, the MC demands to be called Lord, but the stubborn girl insists on the title Master. Out of patience, the young man accepts the madness and tells the servant to obey his orders from now on. Promptly, the maid nods her head, agreeing to the condition. Being very direct, our hero warns her that the journey will be no walk in the park. He honestly reveals that the path is brutally dangerous, and the final destination is a true monster den. In the middle of the garden, he makes it clear that all the comfort of the mansion will be gone forever. In a very serious tone, the noble warns that her daily tasks will be infinitely worse than just serving him. Fair in his decisions, the young man states that the pink-haired girl has the option to stay and safely take care of the house. In an understanding tone, he assures her that either way, she will be of enormous help to his future. Suddenly, the magic system rewards our MC with extra points, leaving the poor guy completely confused. Completely melting with love, the girl screams that she will follow him and do absolutely anything for him. With a smirk, the Lord jokes that the girl's salary will only be discussed after she hunts a few monsters. Further down the road, the scene cuts to a rebellious horse that simply refuses to obey commands. Checking the status screen, the MC notes that the mount hates carrying anyone who isn't its official owner. Following the panel's tips, he soon discovers he can tame the stubborn animal by spending a few experience points. Frustrated, our super cheap hero laments having to spend valuable resources just to tame a simple horse. From a distance, the redhead finds it very strange that the commander rides like a total amateur. To solve the stubbornness, the young man decides to name the animal something ridiculous in honor of his sister. In a very loud voice, he announces the mount's new, embarrassing name to test the animal's reaction. Overjoyed, the horse loves the nickname, and our MC immediately tells it to sit. Totally submissive, the animal squats down as the system reveals it's a creature that's super sensitive to compliments. Excited by the success of his trick, the commander gives the official order for the march to finally begin. Slowly, the army proceeds along a long, flawless main road that connects the entire great continent. Protected by ancient divine magic, this gigantic route prevents any monsters from getting near the convoy. Completely bored with the monotony, the noble grumbles that this safe path seems to go on forever. Suddenly, Vice Commander Lillian approaches the front of the platoon with a very serious expression. To get the leader's attention, the redhead warrior says she needs to have a very urgent word with him. At that moment, the boy realizes that the grim rumors he heard in the capital were completely true. With no time for his subordinates' rambling excuses, the Lord asks her to get straight to the point of the military report. Fully focused on strategy, our hero just awaits the bad news that's coming down the road. With great firmness, the redhead reveals that bizarre creatures are mysteriously appearing on the sacred highway. In shock, the young man questions how that's even possible if the place is supposed to be 100% safe from beasts. Without many answers, the warrior confirms the serious trouble, saying that even the royal army has already been mobilized there. Annoyed by his bad luck, our MC laments the end of their peaceful journey and the beginning of a true logistical nightmare. Awaiting orders, she asks if they will face the danger head-on or take a much longer detour. Deep in thought, the boy coldly analyzes the options to avoid wiping out his troop on the very first day. On the magic screen, the two routes appear, focusing on fighting for rare rewards or fleeing and losing a lot of time and food. With his eyes closed, the strategist weighs the mortal risk of the adventure against the false security of the detour. Shocking everyone in the cavalry, he turns to Lillian and asks for the vice commander's own, brutally honest opinion. A bit awkwardly, the warrior dodges the great responsibility, saying she will follow any order from the noble lord. However, the soldier advises the young man to keep his mouth shut about the deadly monsters to avoid causing mass panic. Looking at the civilians and prisoners, the MC understands that fear would cause the entire group's morale to plummet. Going against the grain, he announces with great conviction that lying to his own defenseless team is not an option. Despite praising the stealthy tactic, the Lord decides to follow the path of total transparency with the group. Moved by his sudden honesty, the warrior admires the true leadership posture the young man is now showing. Being very pragmatic, our MC argues that the terrifying shock of a surprise attack would be 1,000 times worse for everyone. Moving to the front of the troop, he declares that constant vigilance is the only salvation for everyone present. With a deafening shout, the great commander orders the entire battalion to halt their march immediately in the middle of the road. Straight to the point, he drops the bombshell right away, revealing the presence of bloodthirsty abominations on the road. Immediately, a strong commotion takes over the civilian crowd, but the experienced soldiers try to maintain their tough guy facade. With a completely sadistic smile, the blonde priestess celebrates the perfect chance to spill some blood on the very first day. Pale with fear, the little hobbit thief already bitterly regrets agreeing to leave his cozy jail cell. To contain the budding chaos, the redhead vice commander demands total silence from the troop on the spot. With an oppressive aura, the boy cuts off the blubbering, warning that he won't tolerate insubordination from anyone there. Very firm in his final decision, he decrees they will continue on the main path because the long detour offers no guarantee of safety. Facing the workers, the Lord swears on his own life that he will protect every single one of them in the imminent battle. Being super sincere, he reminds them that any road in this bizarre world has deadly dangers like bandits and wild beasts. Finally, he allows anyone who wants to flee to do so, but warns that staying with the cavalry is their only chance of getting out alive. On the panel, the passive influence skill levels up, easing the crowd's dissatisfaction. Straight to the point, one of the workers demands hazard pay for the imminent risk of their demise. On the magic screen, the system warns that paying the fee to the civilians will make the soldiers furious with envy. Completely shocked, the Lord realizes that any choice the system offers will screw over the group. Coldly, our hero figures out that the troops would go crazy fighting on the front lines without getting any bonus. Looking at the pink-haired maid, he remembers that the game always offers terrible options for negotiation. In a stroke of genius, the boy decides to create his own creative solution outside the normal rules. In a loud voice, he promises to distribute a portion of the spoils from the hunted monsters as a reward for everyone. To seal the deal, the noble demands that the civilians build the barricades and defensive traps. With great authority, the Lord reminds them that he is the great count appointed by the queen, and everyone there are his vassals. Super excited, the workers agree to the deal, promising to work their tails off for the coveted coins. To please the cavalry, the leader announces that the guards will have top priority for the kill rewards. Beaming with joy, the combatants celebrate the extra cash they never got in the old royal army. Very proud, our MC notes that he finally has complete freedom to reward his team. In the background, the squad's loyalty skyrockets as everyone marches on, smiling with blood in their eyes. Clenching his fist, the Lord celebrates that taking out the creatures will protect the people and line their pockets with gold. Immediately, the system congratulates the player on the brilliant solution, increasing everyone's affection. In a deafening chorus, the crowd shouts "Long live the Count," with total fanaticism and dedication. After the long march, the convoy finally reaches the famous Western Plains outpost. In a corner, the local residents comment on grim apparitions of trolls wandering through the neighboring village. Nearby, a soldier points to the official government warning for caravans to exercise extreme caution. On high alert, the young man asks to be notified immediately if there's any news about the beasts. Pausing his walk, our warrior sits on a wooden stump, completely exhausted from the journey. Out of nowhere, the pink-haired maid appears, massaging the noble's shoulders with extreme devotion. Finding the scene super cheesy, the Lord tells the girl to stop and go find a spot to rest. Worried, the girl thinks the after-effects of the resurrection have made her master's personality colder. Complaining about his aching feet, the MC laments not having enough money in his pocket to even buy an old donkey. With tears in her eyes, the maid finds her boss cruel but swears to endure any pain along the way. Full of hope, she promises that one day she will cross the country in a luxurious carriage with her beloved. Later at the night camp, the men are terrified by the audacity of the monsters on the sacred highway. Near the campfire, a recruit questions how the beasts invaded a road so full of divine protections. In a dark corner, the Lord asks for a light so someone can light his pipe and relax his mind a bit. Promptly, the crazy priestess launches a scorching spell right at the poor guy's face. With a sudden flash, the flame erupts, lighting the tobacco and nearly toasting our hero's face along with it. Smoking peacefully, the healer explains that the barrier only fell because the angels got lazy. Full of scorn, she curses the divinities for half-assing their sacred duty without any shame. Frightened, the Lord fears divine punishment, but the crazy woman guarantees she'll resurrect everyone if a lightning bolt strikes from the sky. With a sadistic smile, she asks them to keep her ashes in a box in case she gets zapped and bites the dust. Completely shocked, our MC watches the priestess turn her back as if nothing matters. Leaving a super heavy vibe, the blonde mutters to herself sinisterly about the so-called punishment from lightning. Sighing deeply, the boy thinks the gods should focus on the monsters instead of punishing the priestess. Suddenly returning, the healer extends her hand, offering the Lord another drag from the pipe. Without refusing the offer, the young man takes the object back for a good puff to calm his own nerves. Savoring the smoke, he reflects that the flavors of the real world are fantastic compared to the game. Getting back to the serious matter, the leader walks with the blonde, asking for the technical reason for the bizarre invasion. In complete silence, he deduces that the magical world's reality has suffered a strong and dangerous distortion. Very technically, the healer explains that the sacred stones in the road simply lost all their energy. Focused on the conversation, she compliments the young man's sharp mind and then asks about his deceased parents. In a somewhat bitter tone, he reveals the fatal accident, and the blonde apologizes for touching a raw nerve. In his dark memories, the young man remembers that the drunk driver seemed like a worse monster than the ones in the game. With a deep look, the girl states that in the end, the two of them have a lot in common. With a sincere smile, our hero agrees and asks them to focus completely on the mission from here on out. Suddenly, the commander raises his arm and yells for the entire convoy to halt its march immediately. Confused by the abrupt stop, Vice Commander Lillian approaches, asking what the new problem is. On the system display, a red alert orders the brutal defense of the wagons against a horde of Mandreoranis. From the exotic name, the Lord remembers the danger of these bizarre, screaming stags on the western plains. The screen details that these creatures' screams cause a heavy debuff to allies' speed and attack. With his adrenaline pumping, he realizes he needs to set up the deadly barricade before the horned beasts appear. Feeling the air grow much heavier, the warrior notices that even the wind has stopped blowing. Noticing the bizarre tension in the air, the entire team freezes, awaiting the first sign of disaster. Yelling his lungs out, the commander orders a defensive formation, telling everyone to plant their spears directly into the ground. Without hesitating, the troops move quickly, forming an impenetrable human shield around the cargo. Right after, he tells the civilians to plug the warriors' ears with water-soaked cotton. Along the road, the platoons advance, spreading out perfectly to begin the dangerous sweep of the woods. Pointing firmly, our MC tells the hobbit to throw heavy rocks into the suspicious bushes. Using all his strength, the little dwarf hurls a brutal rock right into the thicket, shaking the plants. In an insane leap, the horned abomination jumps out of the forest, roaring like a truly hungry demon. Startled by the beast's ugliness, the Lord mutters a quick curse word while holding his horse's reins. Tearing up the dirt ground, the monster ignores fear, and the commander yells for the cavalry to crush the creature. In the insane heat of the first battle, the poor guy realizes a ridiculous detail about his current life. Drenched in a cold sweat, our MC confesses in his thoughts that he has never even used a sword in real life. Completely panicked, he declares his own doom, trying to prevent them from discovering his total incompetence. Taking the lead, Vice Commander Lillian charges forward with her blade, ready to slice the beast in half. In the middle of the formation, the soldiers suffer in agony as the scream easily penetrates the wet cotton. Finding all the screaming to be a bit much, the boy survives intact, remembering the noise pollution from his military service. On the system screen, a message confirms that the young man is resistant to the screams because of his noisy past. Focused on survival, the warrior wonders if he forgot to protect something important. In the midst of the screaming, he realizes his grave mistake and tells the priestess to cast a protection spell on the mounts. With another shrill roar from the monster, the blonde completely loses her concentration before casting the spell. Panicked, our lord's horse whinnies, brutally rearing up on its hind legs. Terrified, the animal loses its mind and throws its own rider through the air like a sack of potatoes. Completely out of control, the mount bolts, breaking the entire battalion's formation. Causing true chaos, the steed tramples one of the horned monsters in its path. Flying through the sky, the protagonist tries to understand how gravity could fail him right now. In a quick spin in the air, the boy faces a free fall straight to certain doom. Below, the demonic stag just waits for the young man to fall, its mouth open, ready for the kill. With his eyes wide with terror, our MC lets out a high-pitched scream of pure desperation. On instinct, the warrior's sword slides out of its sheath, glowing brightly in the air. By sheer luck, the noble lands with the blade plunged into the beast, securing the prize for the leader's first takedown. Frozen to the spot, the leader tries to hide his trembling after the epic screw-up that turned out so well. Emerging from the bushes, the entire horde of Mandreoranis surrounds our fallen boy in the clearing. Furious about their leader's demise, the beasts show their sharp fangs, ready to tear the young man's body apart. With a war cry, the recruit who wanted hazard pay charges forward to protect the commander. Ticked off, the former logistics worker remembers that the only blade he knows how to use is a butter knife from the kitchen. On the panel, the system reveals that these creatures were peaceful, but went crazy after losing their former leader. Fortunately, the magical interface indicates that these monsters can be pacified even in the middle of intense combat. Grabbing this tiny chance of survival, the boy bellows the pacify command with all his might. Immediately, two of the closest horned beasts lose their fury and gain glowing little hearts above their heads. Taking advantage of their retreat, he uses the commander's shout to intimidate the rest of the aggressive herd. Confused by the voice of authority, the other abominations roar even louder, trying to assert dominance in the pack. Amidst the dust, the cornered lord knows that yelling won't solve the problem of the entire horde. Sighing heavily, the fake warrior grips the hilt of the heavy sword, preparing for the worst. In a fluid motion, the blade cuts through the air with insane speed, decapitating one of the monsters. Surprised by his own strength, he smiles, noticing that the real body's magical abilities have finally activated. Quickly reading the panel, he discovers that the tamed stag screams strengthen allies instead of causing weakness. Moving like lightning, our hero continues to slice through the monsters, admiring his new lethal precision. Enchanted with the weapon, he realizes the steel sword feels as light as a feather in his hand. Full of himself, the noble corrects his thought, admitting it's not that the blade is light but that he is monstrously strong. However, a cruel doubt arises in the young man's mind about the unusual strength of this knight character. On the glowing screen, the system confirms that the real player's stats have merged with those of the possessed body. Beaming about the double status bonus, the Lord thinks this is the most broken and wonderful thing in the world. In the back of his mind, a small concern hits him as he realizes the fusion might bring unforeseen problems. Without wasting time on theories, the warrior charges forward again, tearing another beast apart through the chest. Flying back in pain, the horned creature agonizes before collapsing lifelessly on the blood-stained ground. Immediately, the commander turns to the two tamed stags and yells a bizarre attack order. Confused and sad, the two little creatures whimper, refusing the idea of attacking their own pack brothers. Frustrated, the young man doesn't understand why his new minions are disobeying direct orders in the middle of a battlefield. Pressured by the horde, the warrior improvises, telling the two cowards to stay away and only scream when he commands. In desperation, the redhead Lillian shouts for the Lord, drawing his attention to the surrounding chaos. Behind the young man, a huge stag prepares for a deadly gore to his defenseless back. With a perfect lunge, Vice Commander Lillian drives her spear through the monster's neck, saving her boss's life. In a shower of blood, the creature collapses, choked, before it can even make a sound. Behind the defensive line, the soldiers cover their ears, whimpering every time the abominations scream. Thinking tactically, the Lord instructs the warrior to always aim for the neck to prevent the creatures from making noise. With red eyes, another furious Mandreorani prepares its sonic attack to weaken the army. Very quickly, our MC springs the sound trap, ordering the tamed stag to scream with all its might. Confusing the allies, the magical buff overwrites the enemy beast's debuff, canceling the effect mid-combat. In an insane chess game, the boy uses the two little creatures like radio communicators to nullify the noise. Coordinating their perfect roars, the pacified duo screams in sync, leaving the enemy beasts dizzy. Without their sonic advantage, the monsters become easy prey and fall quickly under the relentless blades. Totally shocked by the bizarre scene, Lillian doesn't understand why the monsters started a screaming duel. Racing against time, the Lord tells her not to take out the support duo and focuses on the rest of the battle. Noticing a gap in the enemy platoon, the young man scans the forest, looking for the remaining beasts. With his heart racing, he sees the horned creatures stealthily running towards the supply wagons. Furious, the commander curses loudly and orders the entire cavalry to chase after the fleeing horde. Without his own mount, the noble points to the tamed stag and demands the creature become his new war horse. Trembling with fear, the beast backs away, but the young man deepens his voice, ordering total submission on the spot. Stunned, the redhead warrior can only watch her boss's madness as he mounts a giant demonic stag. In the soldiers' minds, the noble has suddenly become a complete madman, far more terrifying than the enemies themselves. Shrugging off the embarrassment, the kid accepts that without money for a horse, even an ugly monster will do as a taxi. Atop the beast, he shouts the command to advance, cutting through the wind to save the defenseless camp. Far away, the protection troop raises their spears, ready for impact against the swift beasts. Focusing on the wagons, the entire herd roars, breaking the morale of the scared spearmen at the barricade. Atop the cargo, the ex-prisoner Bonnell lets out a mocking laugh, calling the monsters out for a fight. In a perfect throw, the little thief hurls a brutal rock, crushing the first invader's skull on impact. Screaming in pain, the beast falls face first into the dirt, while the little dwarf celebrates the first takedown. Taking advantage of the dust, the herd ignores their brother's demise and charges forward, completely breaking the defensive line. Far from the front line, the blonde priestess sighs with boredom, finding the Lord more cowardly than usual. Joining her hands in prayer, she calls upon divine power, invoking a strong, brilliant aura of protection. Enveloping all the defenseless civilians, the wall of sacred light repels the monsters, throwing them back into the forest. Blinded by the divine flash, the monsters scream in pain as the sacred light burns their eyes. With her hands clasped, the healer prays for the light to embrace and protect the weakest among them. Maintaining her implacable posture, she orders the celestial energy to explode with all its force. In the middle of the battlefield, a massive beam of golden light rips through the sky towards the ground. Hitting the horde head-on, the magical explosion pushes the horned beasts away from the defenseless civilians. Bathed in the scorching aura, the stags roar in agony, retreating like terrified dogs. Seizing the opportunity, the Lord shouts, ordering the soldiers to close the barricade and cut off the escape route. Without losing a second, the guards push the wagon wreckage, sealing the beasts in. Trapped, one of the Mandreoranis sweats bullets as it sees the humans blocking the exit to the forest. Behind the monsters, the sharp spear tips glisten menacingly, aimed right at their necks. With a wicked smile, our hero mocks them, saying the trap has become a closed pasture for stags. Focused on the carnage, the Lord climbs onto a piece of a makeshift wagon, turning it into a blade-covered tractor. Thirsty for the kill, he calls the platoon over and announces that the real bloody fun begins now. Immediately, the system shows that the monster's affinity has plummeted to negative levels from sheer terror. With his sword in hand, the commander bids farewell to the beasts, preparing the final blow for dinner. Noticing the fear in his prey, the Lord lowers his blade and offers mercy in exchange for total submission. Quite sadistically, he welcomes the trembling beast to the Tamer's territory. With a gleam in his eyes, the young man sees the entire horde as nothing more than a pack of free cargo horses. Immediately, he orders Lillian to stop the slaughter, announcing he will enslave the rest of the herd. Shocked by the idea, the redhead warrior stops her spear midair and asks if her boss hit his head too hard. With the utmost calm, he assures her he's perfectly fine and of sound mind. Ticked off, the vice commander accuses the noble of having gone completely insane after rising from his eternal slumber. At the back of the troop, the recruits whisper in terror about their leader's insanity in taming those beasts. The system pops up with messages, warning that the vassal's morale is plummeting with this bizarre decision. Not caring in the slightest, the MC pulls a piece of fur from the fallen stag, noticing the material is top quality. Impressed by its softness, he quickly realizes that this luxurious pelt is worth a good chunk of change on the market. To quell the military rebellion, he raises his voice, demanding that the entire squad pay close attention to his next words. With a phony chosen one speech, he lies, saying he awakened a divine superpower after coming back to life. Pointing at the beasts, he reveals his incredible ability to transform the cruelest monsters into docile allies of humanity. Right behind their boss, the two already pacified stags watch the scene, twitching their ears like kittens. Aware of the animal's terror, the system advises the tamer to calm the poor things down before continuing. Falsely gentle, the young man pets the horned creatures' heads, promising delicious hay for everyone. Bellowing the sit command, the tamer orders the beasts to lift a leg and stick out their tongues. Completely jaw-dropped, the soldiers admire the miracle of the fierce beasts obeying like trained puppies. Satisfied with his little show, the commander dismisses the animals, telling them all to rest in a corner. Dumbfounded, Lillian mutters that the demons don't even want to try escaping the camp anymore. Very convincingly, the Lord argues that the new pack mules were a great help in slaughtering the rest of the herd. To secure support, he pulls the glowing leaves and sap-filled horns from the fallen carcasses. Holding the gooey pieces, the boy teaches the troop about the monster's bizarre healing properties. Fully convinced by the promise of healing, the soldiers start to murmur, finding the idea brilliant. Smiling, the noble calls for the maid Peach, immediately asking for a good cup of hot water. Without wasting time, he calls the fearful recruit to the front of the troop, using the poor guy as a guinea pig. Scaring the poor soldier, the commander lists all the kidney problems and night sweats the guy has. Thinking the Lord is a true oracle, the recruit has no idea the system ratted out all his ailments on the panel. With the disgusting tea ready, the young man shoves the mug at him, demanding the soldier drink the green potion to the last drop. Sweating bullets, the soldier downs the bizarre tea in one long, brave gulp. Suddenly, a strong blue light envelops the recruit's body, healing all his pains instantly. Impressed, the guy puffs out his chest, feeling a vital energy he hadn't felt in many long years. In a corner, the blonde priestess runs her hands over the soldier's clothes, intimately verifying the healing miracle. Finding the examination a bit too thorough, the young man blushes at the holy healer's wandering hand. Nearby, the Lord is already planning to export the medicinal horn to the eastern continent, where it will be worth pure gold. Excited, the vice commander approves of the brilliant idea of endlessly harvesting the material from the living creatures. Smiling, the commander pets the peaceful beasts as if they were the real golden goose. Finally convinced, the recruits accept the presence of the new horned mascots in the battalion. Suspicious, the blonde warns that rehabilitating ex-prisoners is already difficult, let alone handling unstable monsters. To counter her concern, the Lord claims to fully trust the reform magic of his system panel. In a mocking tone, the healer says she would love to punish and burn the beasts if the reform goes wrong. With a general shout, the MC faces the beasts and asks point-blank if they will attack defenseless humans again. Offering a contract, he promises shelter, good grub, and VIP treatment in exchange for their heavy-duty mule service. Whimpering with joy, the entire herd swears loyalty, unlocking a mountain of points for the tamer. The magic panel quickly glows, informing him that his taming power has seriously leveled up. With the troop calmed, he asks aloud if anyone else has anything against his new little cargo creatures. Absolute silence reigns as the system confirms the mission is complete with a perfect rank and 0 casualties. Thrilled with the great victory, the Lord declares the end of the chaos and announces a grand feast for the crew. Near the campfire, a bizarre piece of purple meat with bulging veins sizzles on an iron spit. Aware of how gross it looks, Lillian finds the idea of a monster barbecue absurd and asks if it wouldn't be better to just burn the carcasses. Full of appetite, the commander says that wasting food is a sin and that he's already ordered the creatures to be put on the grill. To reassure the group, he promises on his honor that he wouldn't give the soldiers something he wouldn't eat himself. In the background, the old cook grumbles, annoyed with his boss for insisting on making such a weird dish. Checking the master chef's status, the Lord discovers that the old man's soups are delicious but look awful. Before the meal, the blonde priestess says a bizarre prayer, asking the angels to bless the sinful beasts. Drooling with hunger, the healed soldier stares at the red meat with disgust, suspecting the dish might be poisonous. Defending the delicacy, the Lord praises the butcher team for having properly drained the toxic blood from the horned creatures. Giving orders, the young man informs the head chef that he'll be taking over the pans and dictating the exact seasonings. Pouting, the cook accepts the noble's intrusion, making several annoying clicking sounds with his tongue. Getting his hands dirty, the Lord demands they separate the fat from the monster's belly immediately. Very technically, he orders them to wrap all that soft fat directly around the sirloin. Tying it tightly with string, the young man warns that if he hears one more click from the cook, he'll cut his salary. Placing the meat in the stone oven, the commander waits for the fire to do the heavy lifting. At another station, the noble skewers the ribs along with whole onions on the hot iron. To please everyone, he decides the meat will be medium, avoiding any picky eaters in the camp. Grumbling under his breath, the old chef makes another click and almost gets a scolding from his short-fused boss. Straight from the wagon, the pink-haired maid pulls out a mysterious jar, making the Lord very curious. Surprised by the discovery, he celebrates seeing soy sauce and laments not finding some good kimchi as well. With the Eastern condiment in his hands, the boy feels he can finally season the food the right way. Ignoring the old man's criticism, he says that what's important is that the people in the camp like the final taste. Pouring wine on the meat, the improvised master chef uses horn tea to kill the beast's strong smell. In a hurry, he tells Peach to squeeze the juice from local fruits to sweeten the marinade even more. When the meat comes sizzling out of the fire, the arrogant cook tries to hastily grab a piece. Mercilessly, the Lord tells the old man to hold his horses and let the cut rest to keep it juicy. Finishing with coarse salt, the commander cuts a generous piece and offers it directly to the grumbling old man. Suspicious, the chef bites into the meat, chewing very slowly to try and find any flaw in its preparation. Bathed in an explosion of flavors, the old man's eyes widen as he feels the meat melt in his mouth. Utterly defeated, the cook apologizes 1,000 times for his arrogance and swears loyalty to his boss's new talent. With the dish's success, the noble's influence skill levels up absurdly fast. At the tables, the soldiers cry with emotion over the unreal tenderness of the improvised barbecue. Satisfied with the show, the Lord tells the kitchen team to devour the rest before it's all gone. In the middle of the party, the entire camp raises a toast, celebrating the day's brutal victory with full bellies. Later, a divine aroma of dark sauce fills the air, making the guards drool all over again. Tasting the secret stew, our MC almost cries with joy at the perfect taste of the Asian recipe. Thrilled, the recruits shout with joy as they try the famous Mandreorani bulgogi. In the giant pot, the broth simmers with mushrooms and juicy pieces floating in the dark marinade. With their bellies full, the night falls heavily under the bright light of the full moon, illuminating the camp. Spread out on the ground, the workers sleep like logs, snoring loudly after all the drinking. Far from the party, Lillian walks pensively, trying to understand the bizarre change in her boss's personality. In her head, it makes no sense for the commander to suddenly become a chef and serve monster meat. In the warrior's memories, the old lord was super picky and would never get his hands dirty for the common folk. Even worse, she can't accept how he managed to tame those terrifying beasts overnight. Tired of theories, the vice commander swears she has decided to blindly trust her captain, regardless of his crazy antics. Passing by the main tent, she notices the lord's shadow moving alone inside. Hearing a dull thud on the ground, the redhead freezes, thinking her boss fainted from exhaustion. When the thud repeats louder, worry takes over the loyal warrior's mind. With a desperate shout, she bursts into the tent, thinking an assassin managed to get past the sentries. Sliding across the rug, Lillian gets into a combat stance, ready to take out any intruder. On the cabin floor, the panting lord looks up, startled by the sudden invasion. Surprised by the scene, the soldier relaxes her shoulders and asks if he was training in the dark. With a sheepish smile, the young man admits he was scared out of his wits by his subordinate's ninja entrance. A bit embarrassed, the redhead notices her boss's defensive posture with the makeshift sword. In the dimly lit tent, the atmosphere becomes tense as the warrior processes the young man's strange movements. In a quick summary, Lillian concludes that the lord lost all his sword technique due to the trauma of his demise. Unfiltered, she confesses that his stance in the earlier battle looked worse than a mere rookie recruit's. Sighing heavily, the noble agrees, but Lillian brings up a point that still doesn't add up in her head. If his talent with the blade is gone, she questions how on earth his raw strength increased so absurdly. Enchanted, the soldier remembers him grabbing a giant stag with one hand and cutting the others like they were paper. In her view, the captain lost his technique but gained the strength of 3 men combined. Accepting the crazy give-and-take logic, she finds his new power to rehabilitate cruel beasts bizarre. Clenching her fists, the redhead points out that he even recruited prisoners and is now allying with demonic beasts. Firmly, Lillian states that the old captain would never tarnish the honor of the knights with such dirty tactics. Straight up, the noble retorts that so-called knightly honor is useless if it doesn't keep the people's bellies full. Firm in his new ideals, the boy swears that this phony honor also doesn't protect anyone from certain doom. Crushed by his argument, the warrior tries to retort, but the young man interrupts her, calling her by her affectionate childhood name. Near the bed, the lord's wooden sword rests against the wall, confirming his sleepless nights of secret training. In a sincere tone, he confesses to being just as lost as she is since he miraculously came back to life. Asking for patience, the MC begs for time to adapt to this new, more pragmatic and brutal version of himself. Promising to prove his worth, he demands her trust to be able to lead the group towards the deadly territory. With a smirk, the Lord asks Lillian to keep the little secret of his martial amnesia just between the two of them. Sad for having doubted him, the redhead apologizes, thinking she only made her boss's life harder with her paranoia. To make up for her blunder, the warrior tells the young man to grab the wooden sword leaning in the corner. Excited for the mission, she announces she will personally train her beloved lord from now on. Outside the tent, the duo improvises a night arena for the master to get thoroughly beaten by the student. In his old memories, the lord remembers that he was the one who taught the redhead how to fight in the past. Fired up, Lillian swears to return all the brutal lessons she received when she was younger twofold. With his body all banged up, our hero groans in pain on the tent floor after taking a monumental beating. Furious, the maid Peach complains about the redhead's audacity and promises revenge for her beaten master. Exhausted, the young man tells the pink-haired girl to go to sleep too, because dawn is already breaking. To shake off the clingy girl, he warns that anyone who stays awake will have to help beat the meat sauce. With the tent finally empty, the lord cries in pain, feeling his muscles burn on the hard bed. Regretting having sent the maid away, he realizes a massage would do wonders for his back. Looking on the bright side, the fake captain celebrates the chance to at least understand the basics of a real sword. Aware of his own weakness, he vows to master the technique as quickly as possible so he doesn't get taken out by the first ogre that shows up. Working up a sweat, the MC realizes that relying solely on brute strength with a sword is suicide. Thoughtfully, he rules out using bows since the platoon has many archers in the rear. Lost in thought about firearms, the boy dreams of the overpowered idea of using a revolver. He immediately snaps out of the delusion, knowing that making gunpowder and metal parts from scratch is impossible. Laser-focused, he decides he needs a devastating long-range secondary weapon to cover his close combat gaps. Suddenly, the system flashes a golden notification, unlocking the passive skill Cannon Folk. With a grin from ear to ear, the fake captain remembers his time in the military, serving in the heavy artillery. On the panel, the interface suggests that the territory is rich in rare ores and explosive mana stones. Fiddling with a magic ring, he notes that he already has the perfect fuel right at his fingertips. Even with infinite resources, the kid admits he needs to find dwarf engineers and mages to build the superweapon. In his dark game memories, he remembers turning down some specialist prisoners back in the capital. Really annoyed with his own blunder, he regrets having ignored the engineers because of their low stats. Outside the tent, a desperate guard interrupts the boss's brilliant train of thought. Pale with terror, the soldier shouts that the neighboring villages are being massacred by giant trolls. Without a second thought, the captain orders a full mobilization to save the civilians from the brutal attack. In the middle of the main street, the Lord comes face to face with the first greenish troll, drooling with rage. With a deafening roar, the giant creature charges forward, tearing through the darkness of the night. In a pure survival reflex, the boy dodges an axe swing that would have crushed his skull. Remembering Lillian's lessons, he uses the short dodge technique, keeping his feet firmly planted on the dirt ground. Delivering a swift blow, the blade cuts the monster's chest, sending dark blood flying everywhere. Frustrated by the shallow attack, he mentally curses the toughness of the bipedal abomination's hide. Focused on the battle, the warrior notices his magical aura weakens with every slight lapse in concentration. Giving no quarter, the troll raises its stone axe, ready to slice its opponent in half. At the last millisecond, the MC slides to the ground in an acrobatic move, escaping certain doom. Planting his support foot, he kicks up dust and spins his body with full force. Using the momentum, the captain launches an upward strike, slicing the beast from bottom to top. The monster's skin quickly begins to bubble and heal in the blink of an eye. Understanding the bizarre strategy, the boy figures out the beast attacks with an open chest because it trusts its super regeneration. Furious, the troll charges like a bulldozer, completely ignoring its own wounds. In the head-on impact, the Lord's heavy sword clashes against the green torso, stopping the monster's advance by force. Roars of agony echo in the empty street as the beast feels the steel tear its flesh again. With a lethal twist of the blade, the commander severs the troll's fingers, disarming his opponent on the spot. The green fingers roll heavily onto the dirt ground, leaving the monster completely vulnerable and furious. Far away, another recruit is getting beaten badly by an identical beast in the moonlit square. Helping his fallen comrade, the young soldier mutters that he'll survive despite the nasty cuts. Noticing the deep wound, the captain concludes that the stone axe nearly split the boy in two. Without hesitating, the MC remembers to use the fresh blood of the recently slain monster as a makeshift healing potion. On the panel, the system shuts down his genius idea, warning that pure troll blood causes fever and even worse in humans. Bleeding heavily, the recruit panics, spouting classic farewell lines straight out of a soap opera. In a ton of pain, he cries, remembering his dream of marrying his childhood sweetheart after the mission. With zero patience, the Lord tells the soldier to shut up, or he'll finish him off just to revive him by force later. Turning his head, he spots the stag mount running like crazy towards them. Out of breath and with its tongue hanging out, the pacified deer whines that it couldn't keep up with the boss. Straight to the point, the Lord tells the little creature to act as an ambulance and take the wounded man to camp immediately. Mounting an improvised horse, he demands the troops surround the remaining trolls while he forges ahead alone. From a distance, a desperate roar catches the commander's attention in the middle of a village side street. Flying like a rag doll, a recruit is brutally thrown by the giant beast. With no time to draw his sword, the young man focuses all his intent and shouts with absurd force. In the system, the pacification ability activates, consuming the Lord's precious points in a second. Paralyzed, the troll blinks in confusion, dropping the scared recruit who is already awaiting his end. In a shock, the bizarre spell invades the monster's mind, replacing blind fury with instant loyalty. Dazed, the beast mumbles dumb questions, not understanding how its killer instinct suddenly vanished. Up close, the Lord checks the monster's file, discovering the creature has an above-average IQ for its race. Ignoring the green giant's existential crisis, the captain orders the soldier to retreat to the safe zone immediately. With trembling legs, the recruit blindly obeys, letting his crazy boss take control of the tense situation. Very submissively, the troll stammers, swearing loyalty as it bows to the relentless Tamer. At the end of the street, another troll appears, running in confusion as it sees its pack brother talking to a human. With a cold smile, our hero sees the perfect opportunity for his cruel little act. On the glowing panel, he compares the absurd strength of his green ally against the weakness of the newly arrived enemy. Planning a quick and bloodless for him slaughter, the noble gives the darkest order of the night. Pointing his finger in the newcomer's face, he orders his new green minion to tear his former packmate to shreds. In a fit of blind rage, the newly tamed troll charges and pummels its smaller brother without a shred of mercy. With brutal blows, the green beast smashes the other's face against a wall, sending blood everywhere. Guttural roars echo through the destroyed village as the two monsters destroy each other in a raw brawl. With no chance to react, the smaller troll is brutally knocked out by a clean uppercut under the chin. Watching the show, the Lord mutters that you only catch a crook by using a worse crook. Raising its arm, the victorious monster celebrates the slaughter, awaiting congratulations from its new manipulative master. Bleeding on the ground, the defeated creature still tries to curse the human race for their dirty mind control tactics. With the coldness of a professional assassin, our hero advances, mercilessly slicing the traitor troll in two. Sheathing his sword, he apologizes for the cruel method, swearing the tactic was the only clean way out. Quickly reading the panel, the system warns that the green corpses must be chopped up so they don't regenerate out of nowhere. Using powerful strikes, he dismembers the carcasses, ensuring their permanent end and blocking any kind of magical healing. Very calculatingly, the young man reflects on his troop's strength, noting that the pacify power still fails at higher levels. Terrified by the gore, the tamed deer cries in a corner, begging not to be turned into mincemeat like the green monsters. Far away, the royal troop rides in haste, bringing reinforcements after hearing the deadly silence that followed the screams of agony. Ticked off, the captain curses his own mistake, admitting he should have kept the other troll alive. Surrounded by enraged beasts, the boy doesn't understand why these monsters insist on traveling in pairs. On the magic screen, the system explains that the control spell has a cooldown time depending on the target's strength. Without the mind control cheat, the Lord orders Unit 9 to scream to destabilize the beasts. With a brutal crash, the house doors tremble with the impact of the clash between the soldiers and the trolls. Blasted by a strong wind, the MC shields himself from the debris, feeling an absurd magical pressure in the air. At the far end of the street, the monster is swept away by a cloud of smoke and debris flying everywhere. Confused by the force of the impact, the young man mutters, wondering who cast an explosion spell like that. Scanning the area with his eyes, he knows there are no mages listed in the small attacked village. Focusing on a rooftop, Lillian points her spear, noticing something strange moving in the shadows. Emerging from the smoke, a stout dwarf appears, smiling with an axe and goggles on his head. Roars of rage echo as the wounded troll tries to slice the audacious little guy in the middle of the dust. The Lord quickly remembers the grim detail of having to slice the beast's neck before it regenerates. Very calmly, the little dwarf raises his hand and tells the Lord not to meddle in someone else's hunt. Holding a bizarre piece of rock, the short engineer readies his own heavy artillery. Stunned, the captain tries to figure out what kind of reddish stone that is in the little dwarf's hand. Spinning his hammer, the small builder teaches that you just have to drive a nail into the rock's weak spot. With a perfect sledgehammer strike, he sinks the metal pin into the middle of the volcanic ore. Hot smoke escapes from the stone as glowing runes light up like a time bomb. Laughing loudly, the little guy hurls the rock with all his might right at the green monster's forehead. In a devastating explosion, the entire block shakes, sending dust and troll bits flying through the air. With no chance to regenerate, the beast falls decapitated, its body split in half and toasted. Dumbfounded, the Lord mutters that the harmless-looking rock hit harder than many war cannons. Completely focused, he approves of the damage, calculating that its power easily surpassed the capital's spells. Pointing his finger at the young man, the dwarf confirms his success and introduces himself with pose and pride. On the panel, the system reveals Burnevil's complete file, showing he's an explosives genius. Overjoyed, the Lord grabs the engineer's hand, shouting that he's been looking for him all over the continent. Confused and annoyed, the dwarf shoves the young man away, pulling a small knife from his belt in a quick reflex. Stuttering with fear, the little dwarf demands the captain stay put without drawing any weapons. Ignoring the warning, the boy charges forward in a super-fast advance, tearing through the air and the distance between them. Screaming with hatred, the last troll leaps from the wreckage, ready to crush the short engineer from behind. In a perfect crosscut, the captain slices through the monster's nape before the stone axe can come down. With all his arm strength, he finishes the raw cut, separating the greenish skull from the rest of the body. Final roars echo as the beast's heavy body collapses, and the dwarf falls on his butt from the shock. Agonizing on the ground, the troll's severed head mutters nonsensical words, drooling dark blood. Annoyed by the creature's insane resilience, the MC flicks his sword to clean the gunk off the blade. Finishing the kill, the captain drives the blade deep into the beast's brains to make sure it won't get up again. Drenched in sweat, the young man takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of the battle finally lift from his tense shoulders. Checking his own trembling hand, the lord notices the bloodstains stuck to his light-colored glove. Quite shocked by the noble's coldness, the dwarf comments that he didn't expect to see a rich guy getting his own clothes dirty. Near the makeshift campfire, the little guy smiles, remembering the noble who almost gave his life to save him. Far away, the surviving villagers cry desperately over the bodies of the fallen on the dirt ground. In a pool of blood, a woman screams, begging the priestess to heal her husband who perished in the beast attack. With a hand on his forehead, the captain sighs, knowing that the pain of loss always leads to impossible demands. Smoking her pipe calmly, the crazy blonde doesn't even care about the screams, ignoring the people's wailing. In tears, the crowd begs the holy healer to revive their daughters and husbands struck down by the trolls. Cold as stone, the blonde demands they gather all the scattered pieces of flesh before attempting any magic. Ticked off, a peasant accuses the priestess of being a cruel fake who lets people perish on purpose. To avoid a bigger scene, the captain raises his voice, taking control of the tense situation. Lying through his teeth, he says he called for help, and that paladins from the capital will arrive with full healing power. Calmed by the false hope, the civilians retreat, murmuring prayers as they tend to the dismembered bodies. In a secret whisper, the MC plans to gather everyone's magic in the future to try and resurrect them all at once. Ashamed of his own cowardice, the little hobbit thief criticizes the people's ingratitude after the troops' efforts. A bit sheepishly, the villagers lower their heads, realizing they took out their anger on their own saviors. Finally, the village leader approaches, thanking the hero lord 1,000 times for protecting what was left. With morale through the roof, the system rewards the captain, once again leveling up his influence over the masses. Inside the rest tent, the mood becomes heavy again between the noble and the hot-headed dwarf. Yelling loudly, the little guy refuses to call the young man by the title Count of the Frontier, finding it all a rich guy affectation. Taking offense, the pink-haired maid steps in front and demands immediate respect for the great Lord Tamer. Confused by her audacity, the engineer points a finger in her face, doubting a simple maid would speak so boldly. Breaking the tense mood, the lord sends Peach to fetch cold beer, smokes, and snacks for their short guest. Realizing his mistake, the dwarf refuses the smoke, completely surprising the noble who had imagined the smoking builder cliché. Very seriously, the small engineer explains that the strong smell of smoke ruins his keen nose for gunpowder. Agreeing with his professionalism, the captain dismisses the smoke and asks only for the darkest drink in stock. Sitting on a stool, the lord lowers his head, apologizing for the rudeness of his overprotective maid. Impressed by the noble's humility, the dwarf lets out a chuckle, praising the young man's precocious wisdom. Complaining about the system, the little guy states that the title of lord usually goes to the heads of the young jerks at court. Philosophizing about life, the little guy swears that fancy clothes don't change the trash character of the person wearing the uniform. Taking a big swig from his cup, the builder confesses he has a terrible temperament for dealing with little bosses. Very calmly, the MC asks for the dwarf's total honesty before they close any kind of business deal. Laying it on thick, the little guy praises the plans to build firearms and agrees to follow the lord to the deadly territory. Happy with the progress, the boy gets ready to celebrate, but the dwarf raises a hand, telling him to calm down. Laughing at his caution, the noble asks where all this fuss is coming from a tough guy with so much swagger. Straight up, the dwarf confesses he hates taking orders from rich people and can't stand bowing down to any lord. Terrified of his own short fuse, the little guy declines the official invitation so he doesn't get arrested for insubordination. Understanding the problem, the lord says he has no intention of forcing a blood oath. Curious, the little dwarf asks if the noble is just planning a mercenary contract without blind loyalty. Surprising the master builder, the boy proposes the position of master counselor of the Tamer family. Dumbfounded, the dwarf can't believe a spoiled little lord wants to learn from him instead of just giving orders. Laughing at his disbelief, the noble states that using an explosives genius for manual labor would be the greatest sin. Completely in shock, the little guy repeats the word engineer, almost crying with emotion. In his old memories, the dwarf remembers being called nothing but a lunatic obsessed by those who didn't understand his art. Right on time, the maid Peach arrives, carrying dark beer and hot snacks for the guest. Drooling over the drink, the dwarf smells the authentic imported malt straight from Galia. Deeply moved by the VIP treatment, he realizes the captain reminds him a lot of a dear old boss from the past. Taking a giant gulp, the little guy raises his mug, accepting the proposal but demanding a single condition. With a sparkle in his eyes, he asks to continue drinking and eating these wonderful delicacies every day. Laughing loudly, the young man agrees, and the system announces that the dwarf's loyalty has reached absurd levels. The next morning, the troop sees off the reinforcements from the capital, with the guard leader congratulating the lord for the saved village. Humbly, the commander thanks the guard for their effort, asking them to speak to him informally. Cold and direct, the blonde leader retorts that he would never be informal with a noble appointed by the queen herself. In the middle of the serious conversation, the blonde paladin confesses to being very disappointed with the scout's absurd slowness. Reading the big guy's magic file, the MC realizes the man's stats put him on a legendary level. On the panel, the system warns that trying to poach the paladin for his own army has exactly a 0% chance. Curtly, the paladin turns his head and tells the lord to his face that he is extremely disappointed in him too. Spitting out the words, the blonde warrior finds it a waste for the captain to be losing time in a forgotten frontier. Keeping his cool, the noble tries to deflect, saying the mission was imposed by the crown with no right of refusal. Cutting him off, the paladin pulls out a scroll, announcing he also serves as a royal messenger. In his memories, the cynical queen promises to shower the commander with gold and prizes if he survives the suicide mission. Stunned by the message, the lord hears the paladin officially announce the sudden promotion sent by the monarch. In shock, our boy realizes he is no longer a simple count, but a lord with full royal rights. Holding a bag of pure gold, the paladin explains that the money is to reward the loyal soldiers of the troop. With his hands trembling with rage, the kid tries to hide his massive disappointment with the ridiculous prize. Turning his back, he thinks that the blasted queen just wants to keep him far away from the capital at any cost. Interrupting the gossip, a guard bursts into the camp, warning of a new and deadly monster attack. Near the campfire, a group of kids tries to join the troop, but the lord tells them all to go back to their mothers. Checking the newbie's files, he sees that the peasant's strength barely surpasses level 1. Frustrated, the young man laments his bad luck, since he urgently needs a mage and only finds weak people. Out of nowhere, a female voice calls the lord as he rides slowly through the burning village. Turning his horse, he faces the unknown young woman and curtly asks what she wants. With a gentle smile, the green-haired girl introduces herself, thanking the commander for saving her life. Glowing on the screen, the system announces that he has just found Meryl, one of the strongest weather mages on the continent. Shocked by her insane stats, the boy blinks in confusion upon hearing the girl beg to join the platoon. Holding her hands firmly, our MC seals the deal on the spot without a second thought. In a charming pose, he welcomes the new secret weapon for his future cannon. Right after, the golden panel appears, announcing the end of the tutorial and awarding a perfect S rank for the first mission. After days of exhausting travel, the huge caravan finally reaches the deadly limits of the Tamer domain. Dismounting his horse, the captain steps onto the muddy ground, observing the disaster around him. Faced with total destruction, the lord gulps, staring at ruined buildings and smoke rising on the horizon. In total despair, he scratches the back of his neck, trying to figure out where on earth he's going to start cleaning up this giant mess. Focused on the screen, the system welcomes him to the infinite defense phase, preparing the lord for the real nightmare. Confident in his gamer side, the boy chuckles, thinking he has plenty of time to set up his lines of fire. Out of nowhere, the system's timer starts plummeting from 10 days to a mere 10 seconds. Panicked, the commander yells at the panel, asking what kind of blatant ripoff this is. Immediately, the screen warns that the stops to help the villages have reduced his preparation time to 0. Presenting the first objective, the mission demands the total annihilation of the goblins and the protection of the central office. According to the Grim Rule, the Lord must use as few troops as possible to achieve high-rank rewards. With the digital map in his face, he memorizes the enemy formation and plans the barricades in milliseconds. Beside him, a soldier points out that the so-called district office is in one of the most dangerous areas of the territory. Right on cue, the system issues a red alert, indicating that the goblin band has begun its brutal assault. Yelling, the captain orders the troops to stand still, sending only the scouts ahead to check the enemy's weaponry. Murmurs of revolt rise among the civilians, grumbling about the incompetence of the stuffy noble. Reading the screen, the boy notices that the crowd's morale has plummeted because they think he's lost his mind. Interrupting the crisis, a man in a suit expresses doubt about the Lord's visions of the monster attack. Shocked, our MC reads the man's profile, discovering he is an excellent but super arrogant finance officer. Very sarcastically, the finance guy questions why on earth goblins would invade a bankrupt city with not a scrap of meat in it. Cold as ice, the Lord throws down the gauntlet, challenging the arrogant officer in front of everyone. If the beasts don't show up, the noble promises to hand over his entire personal fortune to the officer. Completely losing it, Lillian mutters, wondering how her boss can bet what he doesn't have. To break the ice, the captain agrees that he wouldn't believe his own lie either if he didn't have magic to spare. Making up another excuse, the Lord claims he awakened the gift of prophecy after being resurrected. Sighing with relief, the redhead accepts the lie, falling hook, line, and sinker for the miraculous after-effects excuse. With a sparkle in her eyes, the warrior swears blind trust, awaiting the next combat order. Satisfied with his vice commander's loyalty, the noble cracks a confident smile and prepares the final ambush. Running back, the dear Ronnie whimpers, reporting that she saw at least 50 goblins armed with stone axes. Thoughtfully, the Lord praises the reconnaissance mission and asks if the deer saw anything else hidden. Frightened, the little creature talks about a bizarre black fog swallowing the back of the invading band. Annoyed, the MC begs the system to project a picture of the fog because he doesn't trust a cowardly deer's narration. With a crooked smile, the young man realizes that if he can talk to the beast, he can also access its visual memory. Immediately, a new notice pops up, confirming his theory and unlocking the powerful ability of mental communion. Shocked, our MC questions why such a good ability was unlocked just now. The system quickly explains it advanced the reward for his brilliant move, and the kid immediately asks to cancel his complaint. Petting the deer, the Lord asks the creature to close its eyes and try to remember that fog again. Right away, the little animal obeys the command, patiently closing its eyes. Surprised by what he sees, our hero's eyes widen as he understands what it is. Through the magic interface, he notes that it's exactly like the fog of war from games that hides unexplored areas. With that in mind, the young man remembers he needed to clear the stage to dissipate the map's darkness and see the area. Smelling a rotten odor in the air, the commander realizes that mental communion also transmits the beast's senses. In a comforting gesture, he continues to stroke the tamed animal's fur. Eyeing the display, the kid deduces that this toxic fog is a system measure to prevent spawn camping. The window then explains that taking out enemies as soon as they spawn greatly reduces the game's difficulty. To prevent this cheat, the game creates barriers or makes monsters invincible for a time, making everything harder. On top of that, getting close to the spawn point causes massive damage to any allies who try their luck. Smiling confidently, the Lord figures that expanding his defenses will increase his territory, so he orders the troop to advance. Without wasting time, the wagon wheels begin to turn heavily on the dirt road. Along the way, the workers push a wagon loaded with rough stones. Side by side, the spearmen march steadily, awaiting the tense moment of combat. Out of nowhere, a loud crack echoes, and the wooden wheel of one of the wagons simply breaks mid-journey. Annoyed by the stop, the Lord asks what in the world is holding up the convoy's march. Getting closer, the commander scolds the recruit for not distributing the weight properly. Analyzing the damage, the noble tells the team to pull the axle first, counting to 3 for a good heave. With all his body's strength, the young man helps the soldiers lift the heavy wooden structure. Watching the scene from afar, the dwarf engineer complains about the slowness and clumsiness of these humans. Out of patience, the grumbling little guy walks over to the group to solve the problem once and for all. Cursing everyone out, the master builder claims that even a trembling skeleton would do a better job. Being very clever, our hero strokes the dwarf's ego, saying it would be a sin not to use the Tamer domain's master armorer. Full of swagger, the little guy lands a perfect blow with his sledgehammer and fixes the part in the blink of an eye. On the ground, the new makeshift wheel spins perfectly, showcasing the craftsman's absurd skill. Curious, the noble questions if the dwarf plans to use that wagon as a defensive barricade. Confirming the idea, the engineer orders the front wheel removed to secure the structure to the ground for good. Explaining the setup, the little guy says he made the joint easier so they could use the loose wheel itself as a shield. Admiring the genius, the kid praises the race while the builder brags about his new battle wagon. According to the tactical map, the troops split into two groups, and the Lord orders an immediate advance. Very calculating, the young man reflects that focusing the defense on a single point is too risky if the line breaks. Eyeing the rocky hill, he figures that positioning the archers up high will be the perfect tactic. However, the slippery terrain makes the climb difficult, and he suspects the system is playing against its own team. A tip then appears, revealing that goblins are not forest monsters and will also struggle to climb the hill. Scared to bits, the green-haired mage hesitates, revealing she's never faced so many beasts at once. Trying to calm the young woman, the commander promises to block any attack and says her weather magic will be very useful. Suddenly, our hero remembers a detail in the mage's file about the forest type and becomes very thoughtful. Changing his plan, the noble tells the recruit to give up his horse and demands to be carried in a very bizarre way. Mounted on the deer, the lord points directly to the top of the hill, ordering Unit 8 to ascend. Leaping over the rocks, the creature climbs with extreme ease, leaving the knight shocked by its agility. Fiddling with the animal's ears, the lord praises its perfect hooves for the wilderness, while Lillian thinks he's completely clueless. Firm on the smooth stones, the deer ensures total grip on the hostile terrain. Reaching the top, the commander orders the archers and the little thief to mount the other deer to climb as well. Screaming with rage, the little dwarf refuses to mount a beast, calling the young man a complete lunatic. Sighing heavily, our MC just makes a hand gesture, not paying much mind to the tantrum. Yelling, the boy orders them to spend the pacification points right away, even if it costs him a fortune. At that instant, the red screen beeps, warning that the first wave of monsters begins in just 10 seconds. In a sinister flash, the countdown hits 0 and the horde of gray goblins appears on the horizon, running like a plague. Drawing his sword, the leader bellows, ordering the archers to aim directly at the enemy's rear guard. Amidst the dust, the short abominations look up in confusion at the top of the rocky hill. Mercilessly, the commander rips his throat, shouting the fire command to his troop. Cutting through the wind, dozens of sharp arrows fly high, seeking the greenish flesh of their targets. Right in the forehead, an arrow sinks deep, felling the first goblin dead on the dirt ground. With the violent impact, the monsters trip over each other, creating a massive pileup of bodies. Focused on the front line, the Lord tells the hobbit to take out the scumbags who are forcing their way through. Mounted on the deer and full of confidence, the roguish little guy guarantees he'll clean up the whole mess himself. Whirling his sling rapidly, he fires a brutal rock shot, crushing the skull of another little gray monster. In a frantic rhythm, the ex-prisoner fires rocks non-stop, showing off enviable aim on the battlefield. Finally reaching the barricades, the enemy's front line comes face to face with the spearmen at the ready. Cornered and completely lost, the goblins stare at the sharp steel tips gleaming in the hot sun. Desperate to escape the blockade, the short beasts try to climb the rocky hill out of sheer desperation. Giving them no chance, the guards thrust their spears downward, piercing anyone who dares to climb the slope. In their failed attempt, the monsters' bare feet slip on the smooth rock, sending them straight to the ground. Seeing the tactical advantage, the Lord raises his hand and orders the archers to cease fire to save ammunition. Being very clever, Bonnell asks if he should stop, but the young man tells him to keep shooting until he runs out of rocks. Quick with a solution, the captain dispatches Unit 16 to go down the hill and fetch more rustic ammo. Down below, the goblins start stepping on their own fallen brothers to try and scale the barricade. Aware of the enemy's trick, our hero says that retreating is not an option and orders Unit 8 to charge down. Eyeing her boss, the redhead Lillian praises his skill in fighting while mounted on such a bizarre beast. Pulling the improvised reins, the commander yells at the top of his lungs, charging downhill against the monsters. Super proud, the vice commander states that his aura control has improved absurdly thanks to their nightly training. Ignoring the warrior's ego, the noble calls the deer Lanny and orders the troop to surround the enemies from the opposite side. Racing down the hill, our MC scares the enemy line, mounted on his bizarre deer. Completely in shock, the goblins scream, unable to believe a human has tamed a Mandreorani. Gripped by terror, the little gray monsters begin to retreat in a very cowardly manner. Just then, one of the creatures looks up, noticing a fatal shadow coming from above. In a quick flash, the warrior's blade cuts through the air with absurd violence. With no time to defend, the enemy falls dead to the ground, gushing blood instantly. Suddenly, the Lord turns his head, feeling an overwhelming aura emerge on the battlefield. Right in front of him, a poison squad leader appears and the system beeps a sub-boss alert. Confused, the kid questions why on earth a boss appeared in the very first wave of the attack. Through the interface, he checks the giant monster's raw stats to try and come up with a plan. Annoyed by the injustice, the boy demands an explanation from the magic window about this insane difficulty. Promptly, the system explains that his brilliant use of the terrain has greatly reduced the challenge level. Ticked off, the noble asks if he should just let his own troop perish just to not break the game's rules. Complaining loudly, he demands to know why he didn't receive a heads-up about this adjustment mechanic. With a deadpan expression, our hero feels like the status window is shamelessly making fun of him. Focusing on the big guy, the protagonist figures that winning a duel guarantees a free pacification. However, he quickly changes his mind, deciding not to risk his own skin on such a foolish move. Yelling, the commander orders the archers to concentrate all their fire on the giant monster alone. Tearing through the sky, a true shower of arrows flies towards the muscular beast. To the squad's surprise, the projectiles bounce off the creature's iron bracers like twigs. Stunned by the defense, the Lord notes that the creature parried the blows while the rogue asks for a target. Furious, the sub-boss spins its brutal club with frightening speed. In a violent reflex, the abomination smashes the rock throne by the little dwarf in midair. Enraged, the captain shouts that the huge monster is using the heavy wood like a perfect shield. Sweating bullets, the hobbit rogue bites his lip, completely frustrated at not even scratching the target. In a frantic rhythm, the rock shots keep flying, but the beast parries them all without a hint of effort. Reassuring his ally, the MC tells him to just shoot to stall the enemy's steps. The leader quickly dispatches Unit 16 to bring the weather mage to the front line. Soon, the green-haired girl appears on the battlefield, startled by the emergency call. Trembling, the young healer looks at the blood-soaked scene, completely terrified. With a shaky voice, the little mage asks if the boss ordered her presence. Confirming the plan, the commander demands a devastating gust of wind against the sub-boss. With a shout of effort, the girl waves her staff, releasing only a weak and disappointing breeze. Frustrated, the young man watches the useless little wind hit his face, feeling a massive dose of second-hand embarrassment. Crying her eyes out, the young woman kneels, begging for forgiveness for her miserable spell failure. Completely down, the mage calls herself useless as the boy approaches to talk. On the screen, the system explains that magic damage in the game depends on a hidden dice roll. However, in the real world, fear and lack of confidence drop magic stats to almost zero. Wiping her face, the girl agrees she has no right to cry in the middle of a war. In a super gentle tone, the noble explains that her magic failed because her hesitation blocked its real power. Being understanding, he assures her that any normal civilian would be terrified by this carnage. He then asks the mage to relax her shoulders, as he only needs a concentrated puff, not a hurricane. Up ahead, the giant monster continues to stare down the troop, filled with bloodlust. Motivating the recruit, the captain praises her talent, stating she's the best mage around. Full of smooth talk, he tells it like it is, saying that being the only one in the domain makes her a rare and irreplaceable weapon. Fired up by the compliments, the girl puffs out her chest and swears to try casting the spell one more time. Gripping her staff with all her might, she focuses the accumulated mana directly on the target's blind spot. With a roar of determination, a brutal storm erupts, tearing through the air from the tip of the wood. Impressed by the absurd impact, the Lord has to plant his feet to keep from flying away. Sweeping across the slope, the violent gust hits the goblins head-on, destabilizing the entire horde. Surprised by the force of nature, the rogue wonders if the angels sent this miracle. With magnetic force, the strong wind lifts giant rocks, turning the place into a grinder. Without warning, one of the boulders picks up speed and crushes a little monster's skull instantly. Cutting through the chaos, another heavy rock flies straight like a guided missile. A direct hit strikes the big guy, breaking the creature's perfect posture. Screaming in agony, other beasts are also knocked out by the storm's rocks. In the midst of the dust, the divine magic shatters the enemy line, spreading panic among the monsters. Taking advantage of the black hole in the defense, the Lord orders the little guy to throw the surprise package. With impeccable aim, the ex-prisoner throws a heavy leather bag right into the eye of the storm. With a dry pop, the bag bursts, releasing a dense cloud of white dust over everyone. Alert to the disaster, the sub-boss bellows, ordering the band to get down to withstand the wind. Far away, the wind loses its strength as the troop notices the goblins huddling together like ants. Panting, the mage regrets not taking them all out, but the Lord assures her that her spell was flawless. Seeing the beasts packed tightly in one spot, the boy gives a dark smile, praising their grouping. Further back, the master dwarf builder holds a heavy tarp, completely out of patience. Grumbling like an old man, the little guy curses the delay, saying he almost dozed off waiting for the order. With a cynical smile, the noble tightens his glove to trigger the final and lethal step of the trap. Oozing confidence, he announces it's time to introduce the little monsters to the heavy artillery. Pulling the tarp, the duo reveals a wicked mortar cannon set up in the middle of the field. Confused by the machine of destruction, the Wind Girl asks what that giant iron tube is. Super proud, the MC swears that this firearm makes any magic staff look like a toy. Holding a polished blue gem, he remembers receiving this stone as an award from the crown. Through the interface, the system reveals that the relic copies the element and amplifies the wielder's base power. Straight up, the commander tells the panel to activate the exact blend he planned overnight. Glowing brightly, the gem takes on the attribute of explosive propulsion, ensuring the perfect magical gunpowder for the cannon. Very proud, the engineer shows off the first round stone shell designed for the newly assembled cannon. Together, the Lord and the Master Dwarf prepare the heavy war machine, positioning it on the edge of the hill. Impressed by the sphere's perfection, the captain praises the precision of the little guy's handiwork. Suddenly, the system flashes, activating the artillery master passive, making aiming control absurdly easy. Reading the screen, the MC decides to christen the new invention the improvised mortar before the first shot. The interface quickly confirms that the gem has absorbed full energy, and the Lord takes command of the firing sequence. Adjusting the parameters on the panel, he sets the word fire as the perfect trigger. Focused on the numbers, the warrior manually configures the energy button from 1 to 100 to avoid wasting ammo. Through the magic window, trajectory lines appear, showing exactly where the stone will land. With blood in his eyes, the commander aims at the center of the horde and forcefully yells the word fire. In the blink of an eye, the precious stone reacts to the order, glowing brightly in its compartment. A violent boom then shakes the earth as the cannon ejects the heavy shell out of the barrel. Startled by the sudden flash, the mage's eyes widen, not understanding where all the noise came from. On the field below, the goblins stop running, completely confused by the whistling sound cutting through the wind. Breaking the sound barrier, the rock tears through the air like a meteor with a fiery tip. On pure instinct, the poison squad's big guy dodges the mortal impact, diving to the side at the exact right moment. Super excited, the little guy celebrates the achievement, confirming that his crazy invention works like a dream. Ticked off, the little guy asks if the Lord still doubted his race's building capabilities. With a smirk, the Lord ignores the little show and demands the real bombs for the second shot. The team quickly reloads the cannon's mouth, fitting in the explosive stones created by the Master Dwarf. Tired of hammering, the rogue is reminded that the magic trigger does all the ignition work instantly. In a new deafening shot, the second stone rips through the air with much more force than the first. Cutting through the wind, the round bomb lands right in the middle of the goblin band lost in the mud. In a titanic explosion, the ground shakes, sending hot earth and bits of flesh flying everywhere. Bathed in fire and smoke, the little gray monsters fly like rag dolls, completely torn apart. Stunned by the scene, the healed recruit whispers, thinking it was the magic of some legendary-level mage. With a gleam in his eyes, the dwarf smiles from ear to ear, acknowledging that the kid was a true tactical genius. Always thinking ahead, the captain asks about the chance of launching smaller explosive pebbles using bows. Furious with the idea, the engineer rants that shooting little rocks is for sissy elves, not real dwarves. Pounding his chest, the builder swears he can throw any bomb far with his bare hands, without using any fancy tricks. Analyzing the options, the Lord explains that throwing by hand takes too much time, and the arm can't handle a large quantity. Enchanted by the explosions, the little dwarf realizes the cannon shoots fire much farther and faster. Moving on to the next step, the commander tells the dwarf to quickly set up another barricade on the left side of the terrain. With a furious cry, Lillian skewers a cheeky goblin, tearing the creature in half with her steady spear. Taking advantage of the opening, another creature roars fiercely, trying to slice the warrior from behind. In a perfect reflex, the vice commander spins her body, dodging the treacherous axe swing. With absurd force, she smashes the base of her spear right into the monster's mouth, crushing the beast's teeth. Wiping her blade, Lillian sends 2 more enemies to their graves in a single deadly blow. Smiling, the leader approaches and praises the carnage, stating the platoon can handle it just fine. Mockingly, the warrior agrees and reminds him that playing dirty with a pack of beasts was never against knightly honor. Taking credit for the trickery, the noble confesses that he taught the crew the sneaky tricks they use today. Without wasting time, he orders the front line to retreat, warning of a brutal close-range attack. In the back, the spearmen murmur in confusion, trying to figure out if that boom was some long-range spell. Screaming, the redhead demands the entire squad get their heads down and protect their necks as fast as possible. Very confident, she ignores the soldiers' fear, knowing her boss's bizarre weapons don't fail. Absolutely ecstatic, the dwarf holds up a small round metal ball, announcing the new toy for the noble. Admiring the piece, the boy notes the holes in the metal structure, checking the weapon's technical details. In a sadistic chat, the captain cites a traditional recipe of a piglet stuffed inside a pig to explain how the bomb works. Drooling with hunger, the hobbit nearly has a heart attack and questions why he'd bring up a feast in the middle of a war. Smiling cruelly, the noble announces that the night's main course will be a nice gray goblin barbecue. Finding the tactic absurd, the little dwarf begs to know where the kid got the crazy idea of putting a bomb in the shell. In his dark memories, the young man remembers military history classes where he learned about primitive Korean mortars. Cutting the chat short, he tells the engineer to make bigger holes in the bomb to increase the explosion's lethality. Very calculatingly, the Lord reflects that he doesn't need an army of healing mages, since the stone provides infinite recharges on its own. Smiling confidently, he compares the rare gem to a very pure coffee that regenerates energy without needing additives. On the front line, a scared recruit cries in the mud, asking if they can get up and fight again. Ignoring the open field, the goblins pile up, laughing at the fearful humans retreat behind the wooden wall. Celebrating their false victory, the little monsters beat their chests, roaring for the final attack against the ghost town. At the cannon, the MC focuses his eyes on the sight, calculating the exact shot so as not to blow up the bomb inside his own barrel. In a fraction of a second, the system accepts the extremely low force variable, preparing the perfect strategic launch. With everything configured, the Lord sets the force to level 10, betting on the insane project's purely physical impact. Cranking the handle quickly, the dwarf firms up the aim, lowering the cannon's mouth to ground level. With a dry pop, the heavy metal ball rolls out into the battlefield like a killer bowling ball. Startled by the noise, the goblins back away only to see a slow ball spinning lazily on the wet earth. Roaring with laughter, the beasts mock the turtle-like speed of the human contraption, doubting any threat. Being very dumb, the little monsters even think about picking up the smooth toy and kicking it back at the commander's forehead. Reading the bomb's file, the Lord reveals the lethal secret of having removed the magic fuse, activating it by physical impact shock. As soon as the first goblin playfully kicks the iron bomb, a colossal fireball engulfs the entire group. Roars of desperation echo amidst the flash as shrapnel pierces the entire band's thick skin. Celebrating with his arms in the air, the boy cheers at the shower of experience points filling the main screen. Very upset, the master dwarf grumbles, holding the barrel bent by the brute force of the last crazy rounds. Yelling at the little guy, the kid demands he fix the part, reminding him that the master builder is a pro at improvisation. With no time to waste, the squad mounted on the peaceful deer already forms a single file line to hunt down the fleeing goblins. Thoughtfully, the Lord warns that they can't drag out the first wave for too long, or it will merge with the second in a fatal mess. Quickly reading the panel, he confirms that the final scores level depends entirely on the number of soldiers spared in the massacre. With his sword in hand, the Lord orders them to wipe anyone who dares to resist off the map. With a war cry, a soldier raises his spear, ready for the slaughter. Mercilessly, the steel blade pierces a goblin's chest in the middle of the filth. Standing before the survivors, the commander commands absolute respect. Gripped by terror, the gray beasts retreat, whimpering in fear. With a cold smile, the MC promises mercy to anyone who drops their weapon. Full of suspicion, the little monsters whisper about the humans' madness. Faced with their hesitation, the young man immediately notices the potential intelligence of these beasts. Straight up, he challenges the enemies to try their luck against the former executioner captain. With a dark look, the noble gives 3 clear options: resist and perish, fall in silence, or swear loyalty. In a gesture of support, the peaceful deer nod their heads, confirming his speech. In the monster's tongue, the stags guarantee that the Lord's domain is a true paradise. Completely in shock, the abominations drop their clubs in the mud, accepting defeat. Beaming with joy, the Tamer celebrates the mass pacification and immediately numbers his new minions. In a single file line, the newly created greenish troop awaits their boss's orders submissively. Worried about betrayal, a guard suggests tying up the monsters, but the commander refuses the idea. With a heavy sigh, the noble stares at the mountain of bodies, remembering that they don't just disappear in the real world. Turning his head, the boy asks if the goblins are disgusted by handling their fallen brothers. Trembling with fear, they confess they'll take the job as long as they don't have to fight their own kind. Understanding of their trauma, the young man agrees to avoid the family conflict and proposes another mission. Confused, the gray team just awaits the next bizarre task from their human leader. Pointing to the field, the Lord demands the immediate removal of all corpses from the area. Promptly, the monsters salute, agreeing to the dirty work of gravediggers. Without much fuss, the goblins begin to pile the fleshy bodies on the sides of the path. In the brilliant tactician's mind, that disgusting pile serves as a perfect shield against bomb shrapnel. Very pragmatically, he reflects on the danger of leaving bodies behind and attracting plagues or necromancers. With a cynical smile, the kid decides to recycle all the organic matter from the battlefield. On the panel, the system reveals the iron stomachs of these beasts, which even devour their own enemies. Closing his eyes, the boy just accepts the bizarre cannibalistic culture without much judgment. Overjoyed, he celebrates the savings on military rations, taking care of 3 problems with 1 stone. Yelling, the captain orders a shift change, sending the wounded to the medic and the tired to the maid. On the glowing display, the progress report shows 0 casualties and 70 minutes of total peace. In the healing tent, a recruit questions the priestess for massaging his thigh when the cut was on his foot. Cold as ice, the blonde justifies the divine touch by saying she needs to relax the entire muscle. Far away, the pink-haired maid prepares a hot tea with the medicinal leaves from the deer. Extremely helpful, the servant also distributes cookies made with the same bitter herb. After the first sip, the soldiers cry from the horrible taste but pretend they're drinking honey to please the girl. Immediately, the system confirms a drastic drop in the troops' fatigue, thanks to the employees' efforts. Reinvigorated, the recruits express their thanks, feeling the energy return to their worn-out bodies. From a distance, the noble assesses the maid's high charm and plans to double her salary in the future. Near the wagons, the men are impressed by the girl's dry skin after intense sweating. Cutting the mood, the Lord mocks the crew's energy, who looked like a bunch of zombies minutes ago. Smiling, the guards swear that protecting this deadly frontier has become a gratifying job. With a look full of fanaticism, the pink-haired girl stares at her boss, filled with obsessive love. Completely smitten, the servant claims to love the hard work as long as it's for her master's well-being. In the pink-haired girl's disturbed mind, the final plan is to become the great wife and lady of the territory. Noticing the maid's burning aura, the weather mage feels a dreadful chill down her spine. Startled, the green-haired young woman backs away, gripping her wooden staff tightly. Full of shyness, the healer pokes the captain's back, getting his attention. Stuttering badly, the recruit asks for the Lord's most honest opinion about her previous wind spell. Cold with his words, the young man confesses outright that the spell was well below expectations. In a state of shock, the girl's large green eyes widen, completely devastated. With tears falling, the mage apologizes for being completely useless on the battlefield. With a charming smile, the sly young man breaks the ice, revealing that the magic exceeded all expectations. Red with embarrassment, the girl wipes her face, asking incredulously if it's true. Stroking her ego, the commander guarantees her the title of #1 mage in the Tamer domain. Totally motivated, the warrior swears to train 3 times as hard to never disappoint the group again. Leaving the silly mage behind, the Lord walks off to check on the vice commander's situation. Along the rocky path, the boy assesses the immense stone walls surrounding the road. At the end of the path, the redhead Lillian appears, panting, wielding her spear with skill. With a furious cry, the vice commander launches deadly strikes, tearing through the very air. With absurd precision, the steel tip pierces the wood of an improvised target in the dirt. Firm in her stance, the soldier retracts the weapon, maintaining a flawless combat posture. Mounted on the deer, the Lord approaches, clapping slowly for his subordinates' insane training. Straight to the point, he demands an explanation from the stubborn woman, since the official order required everyone to rest. Full of sass, the redhead retorts, guaranteeing she feels no pain or a hint of fatigue. With a long sigh, the noble tells the woman to lower her guard and obey superior orders. Arguing back, Lillian demands the Lord himself rest, worried about the aftereffects of his resurrection. Admitting defeat, the MC agrees to pause his work and calls the deer for a well-deserved nap. Very casually, the young man pops a raw green leaf into his mouth and starts chewing unceremoniously. Savoring the healing herb, the capitalist is already scheming to sell the stuff for a golden price. Changing the subject, the warrior questions the crazy idea of using goblins in construction. With a cynical smile, the commander swears to enslave the new workforce for the growth of his empire. Taking a sip from her tea mug, the woman dismisses any help coming from filthy monsters. Cracking up, the boy informs her that her delicious drink is made precisely from those creatures' plants. Very coldly, the redhead suggests using the captured goblins only as human shields to spare the royal soldiers. Furious at the waste, our MC vows to use the beasts as slave labor since they devour their own trash. Sure of himself, the Lord tells his subordinate to rest, betting that the next attack will only bring weak little monsters again. Suddenly, the magic screen punishes the young man's arrogance, flashing a red alert about the early arrival of elite troops. In the middle of the dark forest, red eyes glow, revealing the lethal advance of new monstrous archers and shield bearers.